chosen one, something you couldn't see has already turned in your favor. There were forces working quietly, trying to slow you down, confuse your direction, and keep you from moving forward. And for a moment it may have felt like it was working. Plans didn't move, doors didn't open, and progress seemed blocked. But what you didn't realize is this: while they were trying to stop you, something else was happening behind the scenes. The pressure didn't break you, it redirected everything. And now, the same situation that looked like a setback is beginning to reverse itself. What happens next isn't random. It's the result of everything that tried and failed to hold you back. 1. The silent setup that was happening behind you. There are times when life feels like it has come to a standstill. You try to move forward, but something keeps interrupting your progress. Plans slow down, opportunities seem delayed, and it begins to feel like every step is being quietly resisted. From your perspective, it looks like a series of obstacles placed directly in your path. You start questioning whether you are going in the right direction or if something is missing. But what often goes unseen in these moments is that not all movement happens where you can immediately observe it. While your attention is focused on what appears blocked, there can be a different kind of movement taking place in the background. Situations may be shifting in ways that are not obvious at first. Conversations you are not part of, decisions being made elsewhere, and small changes in circumstances can all begin aligning slowly. These movements do not announce themselves, yet they create the foundation for what comes next. What feels like a delay on the surface can actually be a form of timing, allowing different pieces to fall into place. This kind of silent setup often works in layers. One part of your life may appear paused, while another part is quietly progressing. You may not notice it immediately because the results are not visible yet. However, the preparation is happening. Paths that were not ready to open before may be forming gradually. Connections that did not exist may be developing. Even your own awareness is adjusting, helping you recognize opportunities that you might have overlooked earlier. Another important part of this process is how it shapes your perspective. When things do not move as expected, you begin to think more carefully about your choices. You reflect on what truly matters and what direction you want to take. This reflection helps refine your focus so that when movement begins again, you are clearer and more intentional with your actions. The silent setup also creates space for better timing. If certain opportunities had appeared earlier, they might not have matched your readiness or circumstances. By allowing things to develop quietly, everything aligns more naturally. When the moment arrives, the path forward feels more stable and easier to follow. What seemed like resistance may actually have been part of a larger arrangement taking place beyond your immediate view. Each delay, each pause, and each unexpected turn may have been guiding things into position. When the results finally begin to show, they often reveal that progress was happening all along, just in a way that was not visible at first. Understanding this can change how you see these moments. Instead of viewing them as complete stops, you can begin to recognize them as periods where important groundwork is being laid. The path may not always move in a straight line, but even when it feels still, something meaningful may already be unfolding in the background. 2. Why their attempt created your advantage. Assigneds eiligheid through mokadissen eiligation suplosa. There are situations where actions meant to slow you down end up producing the opposite result. What appears to be an obstacle at first can actually create a different kind of opportunity, one that would not have existed without that resistance. When something tries to block your progress, it often forces you to pause, observe more carefully, and think differently about your next step. This shift in thinking can open paths that were not visible before. When your usual direction is interrupted, you begin to explore alternatives. You might look at your situation from a wider perspective, noticing options you previously overlooked. This process can lead you toward choices that are more aligned with your long-term goals. Instead of continuing on a path that may not have been the best fit, you are guided toward a direction that offers greater potential. Another way these attempts create advantage is by strengthening your awareness. Facing resistance teaches you to recognize patterns, understand challenges, and respond more thoughtfully. You become more careful with your decisions and more confident in your ability to handle unexpected situations. This awareness becomes a valuable asset as you move forward, helping you navigate future challenges with greater ease. Resistance can also improve your timing. When something slows you down, it gives other parts of your life time to develop. Opportunities that were not ready earlier may begin to form during this period. Connections, ideas, and circumstances can align more naturally when the pace adjusts. By the time movement begins again, everything is positioned in a way that supports smoother progress. Another important factor is how these experiences influence your resilience. When you continue moving forward despite obstacles, you build confidence in your ability to overcome challenges. This confidence changes the way you approach new opportunities. Instead of hesitation, you move with a stronger sense of purpose, knowing you have already handled difficult situations before. What may have been intended as a limitation can also redirect your energy toward something more meaningful. Instead of focusing on what is not working, you begin to invest your time and effort into areas that show real potential. This shift allows you to use your energy more effectively, leading to better outcomes over time. These moments reveal that not every obstacle is purely negative. Some situations carry hidden benefits that only become clear as you move forward. The attempt to block your path can unintentionally guide you toward a stronger position, one that offers more clarity, better opportunities, and a deeper understanding of your direction. When you recognize this, it becomes easier to see challenges differently. Instead of viewing them only as setbacks, you begin to understand how they can contribute to your progress. The same situation that once seemed like resistance can become the reason you move towards something better than what you originally planned. 3. The turning point you didn't notice. There are moments when everything begins to change, but the shift is so subtle that it passes without immediate recognition. Life does not always announce its turning points with clear signals or dramatic events. Sometimes the most important changes begin quietly, hidden within ordinary days and small decisions. You continue moving forward, unaware that the direction of your path has already started to shift. A turning point can begin with something simple, a change in the way you think, a different response to a situation, or a small decision that feels insignificant at the time. These moments may not seem important, yet they carry weight because they influence what happens next. One choice leads to another, gradually guiding you toward a new direction without drawing attention to itself. Another way this turning point appears is through a shift in your perspective. Situations that once felt confusing may begin to make more sense. You might notice that you are reacting differently to challenges, handling them with more patience or clarity than before. This internal change is often a sign that something deeper has already started moving within you. The turning point can also be connected to timing. While you were focused on what seemed delayed or blocked, other elements were slowly aligning. Opportunities may begin forming in places you were not expecting. Conversations, ideas, or new paths can appear at the right moment, but because the process developed gradually, it does not feel sudden at first. Sometimes the turning point is marked by a quiet sense of ease. What once required effort may start feeling more natural. Decisions that once felt difficult may become clearer. This shift in flow often signals that resistance is decreasing and movement is beginning again, even if it is not yet fully visible. It is also possible that the turning point happened during a period when you felt uncertain. Moments of reflection, adjustment, or even doubt can create space for change to begin. While these experiences may not feel significant at the time, they often act as the starting point for a new direction. Because this turning point does not always stand out, it can be overlooked. You may only begin to recognize it as changes start becoming more visible, opportunities begin to appear, progress feels more consistent, and the path ahead becomes easier to follow. At that stage, the shift that once went unnoticed begins to reveal its impact. Understanding that turning points can be quiet helps you stay aware of small changes in your life. It reminds you that progress does not always arrive in obvious ways. Even when everything seems the same on the surface, something important may already be guiding your journey in a new direction. 4. How the situation began to flip on its own. There are moments when a situation that once felt fixed and unchangeable begins to move in a completely different direction. What made this shift surprising is that it did not come from force, pressure, or constant effort. Instead, it started unfolding naturally, almost as if something behind the scenes had reached a point where change could no longer be held back. The same circumstances that once felt heavy and restrictive slowly began to loosen, creating space for new movement. The change may not have been obvious. Small details started to feel different. Conversations carried a new tone. Decisions around you began to shift, and certain obstacles that once felt solid started to lose their influence. These were subtle signs, easy to overlook, yet they were the first indication that something was beginning to turn. Instead of resistance meeting every step forward, there was now a slight opening, a sense that movement was possible again. One of the reasons a situation begins to flip on its own is because of the pressure it has already carried. When tension builds for a long time, it eventually reaches a point where it cannot remain the same. Conditions change, priorities shift, and what once held everything in place starts to weaken. This creates a natural turning point, where the situation begins adjusting itself without needing direct control from you. Another part of this shift is connected to timing. Certain things cannot change until the right moment arrives. While it may have seemed like nothing was happening, different pieces were gradually coming together. People, circumstances, and opportunities were aligning in ways that were not immediately visible. Once that alignment reached a certain level, the situation could no longer stay in its previous state. It had to move forward. You may have also noticed that your own response to the situation changed. Instead of reacting with frustration or urgency, you became more patient and aware. This shift in your approach reduced unnecessary pressure and allowed things to develop more naturally. Sometimes stepping back creates the space needed for a situation to correct itself. When there is less force pushing against it, it becomes easier for change to happen. Another important element is how control begins to fade from what was once limiting the situation. Factors that previously influenced the outcome start losing their impact. Decisions that once seemed out of reach begin to move closer. Barriers that appeared permanent begin to break down gradually. This process may not be immediate, but once it starts, it continues building momentum. As the situation flips, you may begin to see opportunities appearing in places where there were none before. Paths that seemed closed start opening in unexpected ways. Progress that once felt impossible begins to feel natural and steady. This shift does not always arrive with a clear signal. It reveals itself through consistent change over time. The most surprising part of this transformation is how it unfolds without forcing it. What once required effort and struggle begins to move with less resistance. This does not mean everything becomes easy, but it does mean the direction is no longer working against you. Instead, it starts supporting your movement forward. Understanding this kind of shift changes the way you view difficult situations. It shows that not everything needs to be controlled or pushed constantly. Some changes happen when the right conditions are met, when timing aligns, and when the pressure that once held things in place begins to release. When a situation begins to flip on its own, it often signals that a new phase is starting. The obstacles that once defined your experience no longer hold the same power. Movement returns, clarity increases, and the path ahead begins to open in ways that reflect the changes that have been building quietly over time. 5. When control slipped out of their hands. There comes a point in certain situations where the influence that once seemed strong begins to weaken without warning. What once felt controlled, directed, or limited by outside forces slowly starts to lose its grip. At first, this shift may not be obvious. Everything may appear the same on the surface, but beneath it, the structure that once held things in place begins to change. The power that once shaped outcomes starts fading, and with that, new space begins to open. Control often depends on maintaining a certain balance. It relies on conditions staying predictable, on reactions remaining the same, and on patterns continuing without disruption. But when something changes within that structure, whether it is timing, awareness, or circumstances, the balance begins to break. What once worked no longer has the same effect. The strategies or pressures that once influenced your path begin to lose their strength because the conditions supporting them are no longer stable. One of the reasons control begins to slip is because of growth. When your understanding expands, you start seeing situations differently. You become less influenced by confusion or pressure and more guided by clarity. This change reduces the effectiveness of anything that once tried to limit or direct your actions. Instead of reacting automatically, you begin responding with intention. This shift alone can weaken the hold that others or certain situations once had. Another factor is the natural change in circumstances. Time itself alters situations. People make different decisions, priorities shift, and environments evolve. What once seemed firmly in place begins to move in new directions. These changes can gradually remove the control that once existed, even if no single moment marks the exact point when it happened. There is also a moment when pressure can no longer be sustained. Maintaining control over a situation requires continuous effort. Over time, that effort becomes harder to maintain, especially when the situation itself is evolving. As conditions change, it becomes increasingly difficult to keep everything aligned in the same way. Eventually, the control weakens and the situation starts moving on its own. You may begin to notice signs of this shift through small changes. Decisions that once seemed out of reach start becoming possible. Conversations take on a different tone. Obstacles that once felt permanent begin to soften. These changes may not happen all at once, but together they indicate that the control that once existed is no longer as strong as it used to be. Another important aspect is how your own position begins to strengthen. As control slips away from what was limiting you, you gain more freedom to act. Your choices become clearer, and your direction feels more open. Instead of feeling restricted, you begin to experience a sense of movement returning. This shift can create new opportunities that were not available before. The process of control slipping away is often gradual, but its impact becomes more visible over time. What once seemed fixed begins to change direction. The influence that once shaped your experience becomes less noticeable, allowing new possibilities to take its place. Understanding this change helps you recognize that situations are not permanent. Even when something feels controlled or limited, it can evolve. As control fades, space is created for new paths to emerge. This shift allows progress to return, not because it was forced, but because the conditions that once held it back can no longer do so. When control slips out of their hands, it marks a turning point where movement becomes possible again. The situation is no longer confined to the same limits, and the direction ahead begins to open with greater freedom and clarity. 6. The unexpected outcome that changes everything. There are moments when events begin to unfold in a way that feels completely different from what you once expected. After a long period of uncertainty, resistance, or slow progress, the direction of your path can suddenly shift into something that feels more open and aligned. What makes this moment powerful is not just the change itself, but the way it arrives, unexpected, unforced, and often beyond what you originally planned. An unexpected outcome does not always mean something dramatic happens overnight. Instead, it can begin with a series of changes that gradually reveal a new direction. Opportunities may start appearing where there were none before. Situations that once felt complicated begin to simplify. Decisions that once seemed difficult become clearer. These changes build momentum, and as they do, they reshape the path ahead in a way that feels natural rather than forced. One of the most surprising aspects of this kind of outcome is how it connects to everything that came before. The challenges, delays, and obstacles you experienced were not separate from this moment. They were part of the process that led here. Each experience added something valuable, whether it was awareness, patience, or a stronger sense of direction. Without those elements, the outcome unfolding now might not have been possible in the same way. Another important part of this shift is the sense of clarity it brings. When an unexpected outcome begins to take shape, it often removes confusion that once surrounded your path. You start to see connections between events, understand why certain things happened, and recognize how different pieces have come together. This clarity allows you to move forward with more confidence, knowing that your direction is supported by what you have learned. This type of outcome can also expand your perspective. What you once thought was the best possible result may be replaced by something even more fitting for your growth and future. The path you are stepping into may offer opportunities you had not considered before, leading you toward experiences that align more closely with your abilities and goals. Another key element is how naturally this change begins to unfold. Instead of forcing progress or constantly searching for solutions, you begin to notice that things are moving on their own. Conversations flow more easily, decisions become more straightforward, and opportunities feel more accessible. This natural movement creates a sense of balance, where effort and progress begin to align more smoothly. As this outcome continues to develop, it often brings a shift in confidence. You begin to trust your ability to move forward, not because everything is certain, but because you have seen how situations can change in ways you did not expect. This trust allows you to take steps with a clearer sense of direction and less hesitation. The unexpected outcome that changes everything is not just about reaching a new point. It is about entering a different phase of your journey. It reflects the combination of past experiences, present awareness, and the opportunities now appearing in front of you. This moment shows that even when progress is not immediately visible, change can still be building beneath the surface. When this kind of outcome unfolds, it often leads to a deeper understanding of how growth works. It reminds you that not every step needs to be controlled or predicted. Sometimes, the most meaningful progress comes from allowing situations to develop naturally and recognizing the opportunities that appear along the way. As the new direction continues to reveal itself, it opens the possibility for a future that feels more aligned, more purposeful, and more connected to the path you are meant to follow. Chosen one, what you've just heard is not just a story. It's a reminder of how quickly things can change when the right moment arrives. What once felt blocked is no longer holding the same power, and the direction of your path is already shifting in ways you may only now begin to notice. The resistance, the delays, and the confusion were not the end of your progress. They were part of a process that led to this turning point. Now the situation is no longer working against you. Movement is returning, clarity is increasing, and opportunities are beginning to take shape. What unfolds next may not look exactly like what you once expected, but it may lead you somewhere even more aligned with your growth and direction. The most important step now is to stay aware. Pay attention to the changes happening around you, no matter how small they seem. Each moment carries information that can guide your next move. Trust the progress that has already begun and move forward with confidence in your decisions. If this message connected with you, take a moment to share your thoughts below and let others know they are not alone on this journey. Stay focused, stay patient, and keep moving forward, because what is unfolding now may be the beginning of something greater than you imagined.